My name is Nick Ledgard, and I'm speaking for the Ashley-Rakahuri Rivercare group relative to a study that I've done since 2013, every month walking a section of the river and counting the birds on that section of the river. There we have the river right down, well, from midsection of the lower section right through to the coast, and we've been surveying that for roughly since 2002, and which is this section right through here. All I'm going to talk about today is this 1.8 kilometre section there, which happens to be one which is quite favoured for birds from all the work that we've done on the whole of the river. And I'm going to talk about the study that I've done there since 2013. One observer, that's myself. Someone early on said, "Oh, Nick, one observer, that's not, you need more than that." I said, "Why the hell?" One observer for the whole period, far more consistent results than having a group of three, which varies from one survey to the next. One of them can't see well, the other's half deaf. And whereas me, I know my abilities, so even though they mightn't be the best, and they have declined over 11 years, they are consistent from one occasion to another. So I present results. Well, the other thing, one person, I would label this as citizen science. I used to be a scientist until about 10, 12 years ago, and these days that sort of stats and stuff, it's beyond me. And BRaid is all about involving stakeholders, and I think citizen science is something that should be represented. And I note that it's only Anthony, who spoke earlier about the Makarora. He and I think, are the only non-salaried people speaking today. So we're the only, be that as it may. So we are doing a bit of citizen science here. I present observations per month from the May to December period, and I've divided the birds into core species, which are the native by and large, and then the others, just to put them into two groups. And the main focus of this presentation is to prepare winter and summer months. And I chose the winter months of May, June, July, because that's the time when there's very little migration going on. The birds that are going to be there in winter are there. The ones that have gone have gone. Similarly with October, November, December, those are stable months as far as local populations are concerned. You haven't got the migrations occurring, birds coming in and birds leaving after the breeding season. So the core species are the natives, the wrybill, black-fronted tern, black-billed gull, banded dotterel, and the South Island pied oystercatcher. So those are the ones that we have always focused on, particularly the first three, but those are the ones that I've called core species. And other species, got 13 there in total, which included those below. I haven't got a photo there of a shag or a Caspian tern, but you can see those listed below. Two of them are native, the black-backed gull and the kahu, and the paradise. But the others, well, they're Australian immigrants, I suppose, you might say. But anyway, there are certainly birds that have introduced themselves. But before I go on to the 1.8 kilometre stretch, just to give you an overview of what we've done in the since 2000 in the whole 21 kilometre stretch from the estuary through to the Okuku Junction. Those are our annual surveys, and you can see there's gradual rise there, then there's the dip, and then we're starting to rise up to that level we had in 2014. The reason for this dip, as I'll show you in a minute, was we had a real weed incursion, which really, that's the only explanation we can have for numbers really dropping over that period. This skyscraper anomaly here, and it was interesting to hear somebody talking, I think it was relative to the birds in the Napier, Hawke's Bay area, about refuge. And we are almost situations, and we're almost convinced that this particular year, 2019, the Waimakariri was in flood virtually most of the season. And we reckon that the extra birds we picked up then were birds which had come north to use the Ashley-Rakahuri as a refuge area while their habitat was continually being flooded. That's conjecture, of course, but that's the only explanation we can give for that. The main threats to the birds, we know these are weed invasion, predators, and human disturbance, and I'll just have one slide of about each of those. This is weed invasion and one site, and you can see people give before and after photos, and you really have to exercise your mind. Is that the same place? So I always try to make sure the skylines are distinctive, and here you've got that little standard Lombardy poplars in each one of those photos, so it's exactly the same site. This is November 14, a year later, and you can see there plenty of habitat for birds to breed and then feed in the waterway areas, starting to lose that, consequent to particularly the invasion of the yellow tree lupin, and there, well, we've lost it. And from there on, we've got very low bird numbers, as we saw in that previous graph, for a few years. Since then, we've had good floods. We had a good one 18 months odd ago, and that's what the situation was as of August last year. As you can imagine, there's a recovery going on there right now, and we would really love a decent flood before August, September, to make sure that little weeds that are coming away there, can't be seen in that image, are swept out of the way. So weeds can be a major issue. And interestingly, on the Makaroa, the talk there that Anthony gave, didn't really mention weeds, getting to the head of the catchment where you don't have that great source of seed further up. But interesting that it didn't seem to be a major problem on the Makaroa, where it certainly is with us. Predators over time, the major feature of that is the hedgehogs, which are the yellow, have gone down. This major dip there, remember there was a big flood about there, and I reckon half our hedgehogs ended up in Chile. But that was the decline then, and there's been a slow, but always been a consistent catch, not now, of course, within the summer months. The other feature is in this period up to here, quite literally, we were averaging about one rat a year. And that's with a lot less traps than we have now. But from here on, the red is rats, and so these are all, that's the Norway ship and rats generally. Initially, our trappers were having difficulty distinguishing them, so they all went in as rats. But these are all rats, and you can see the increase in rats since this period then, and they were without doubt our biggest problem at the moment. But that's the whole river. And then relative to human disturbance, well, all the usual improving awareness methods, the media articles, these little bookmarks, which we have enough to give to every primary school kid in North Canterbury, take home with them, talking to schools. We made a video, displays, and it's always satisfying to beat the Aussies. And in 2018, we won the Australasian Wildlife Management Society's Practical Management Award for that year. And there's a certain satisfaction in going across and receiving that in front of an audience of Australians. But going to that 1.8 kilometre stretch, and these, what I'm going to present in the next 3 or 4 slides, are very simple, and you'd say, well, we knew that, but I don't know if anybody's ever really quantified it. In terms of the core species and the other species, you can see that there's a huge increase in core species, those 6 natives that we labelled, in terms of their number of species between winter and summer, and same between winter and summer with the total bird numbers. Whereas with the other species, the green columns there, there's no increase per month over the winter or summer in both number of species or the total number of birds. When it changes over time, and here I took the years 2013 to 2017 as the first 5 years and looked at the results from that. Then the last 5 years, 2019 to 2023, and compared them. And in the winter, there was an increase over time in both number of core species and their number of species, individual species, and the number of individual birds, an increase over time. Sorry, between over time, between that first 5 years and the last 5 years. But in the summer, there was no increase in number of species observed during the month, and well, no increase, maybe a slight decrease. I haven't put stats onto that, relative to the total birds per month. Those are those core native species. But what I did notice during the winter months, in that between 2013 and 2023, looking at the whole over that period, The only native species seen consistently over winter, and it was usually just 1, 2, 4, 5 birds, was the black-fronted tern. Except in one winter, 2015, didn't see any during those 3 core months. Banded dotterel and pied stilt about the same. There's an indication of increasing presence over time during winter. Banded dotterel seen in only 1 month, seen in only one winter in the early period and 5 winter months in that second period, the later period. Similarly with pied stilts, 3 winter months they were recorded, 13, 17, and 8 winter months between 19 and 23. And, well, yes, you could wonder if things are changing because of that, but once again, that's a small sample, and I haven't put any statistics onto that. Other species, changes over time between the summer, those first 5 years, and summer and winter in those second 5 years, 1923. Relative to these other species, both the number of species and the total numbers increased between the first period and the second period. And in the summer period, there was an increase in total bird numbers, as you can see, but in terms of the number of species, there was no change in those number of species over time. During the winter months, the most commonly seen native species were the harrier, the kahu, never a lot, always the same. It'd be the most frequently observed bird every time I walk the river, but often it's just 1 or 2, maybe 3. And then the paradise duck, of course. Of the introduced species, you've got the welcome swallow, the spur-winged plover, and the white-faced heron. As I say, all immigrants, and they, especially these two, you can see them in some numbers during the winter. You know, see flocks of 20, 30, 40 during the winter months sometimes, which does confound the figures a little bit. But those were the other species most commonly seen during the winter months. Over time, we've picked up some newcomers to the river, and the spoonbill is certainly, we're seeing a lot more than we used to. And I think the first black-fronted dotterel that I saw on the river was about 2017 or 18. Nobody'd seen one, certainly in our surveys. I don't think they'd even seen one at other times up till then, but now they're not common, but they're frequently seen at all times of the year, actually. The black-fronted, more in the summer than the winter, but the black-fronted dotterel. So my last slide, what are major findings? There's a major difference in the number of the core species, those native and their total numbers between winter, when there's less, and in summer, when there's more. Compared to little difference, little change in the other species. And during winter, there was an increase in time in both core and other species over between that first 5-year period and the second 5-year period. Is this supportive of warming winters? I don't know. When I first started doing this, I used to turn over at least 20 rocks on every walk and look for insect activity underneath it. But I actually gave that up during the winter months because there was just nothing. Whereas now, so I can't give you any figures on that, whereas now when I'm walking in the winter months, particularly in certain stretches of the river, there is, in that section, the 1.86 kilometre section that I do, I'm seeing more insect larval activity under the stones than I used to. Is this supportive of warming winters? We'll never know. But, well, we probably will know in time, but I can't say one way or the other. Thanks very much. No, I don't actually record those. They're not a shorebird, or maybe they are a shorebird, but they're certainly not a wader, and they're more on the berm than they are in the river. So I actually do record them, but I haven't included them in this write-up. Yes, yeah, no, there's obviously we like to see more, and you see more down the estuary than you will here, but no, they're not as part of the study.